Hey beer lovers, this is Shane with I Love Virginia Beer podcast. I Love Virginia Beer is your home for all of the insights on the Virginia craft brew scene. Don't forget to check us out at ilovevirginiabeer.com for all of our beer gear like hats with a bottle opener in it, t-shirts, and much, much more. Today on the podcast, we have Tim O'Brien and Drew Stevenson of Pleasure House Brewing. Thank you both for being here.
No, thanks for coming.
So you guys say you're the first ones to open up a brewery down here on the Short Drive. I assume that being near the beach is a big factor of what you guys are doing. Tell me a little bit about how you guys came to be, how you opened up, how long you've been here, and generally your origin story.
It's kind of a good merger, I think, between Tim and myself. My side of it comes from my wife, mostly. She grew up in this area. She's actually one of the owners of the brewery. I was not a native to the area, and once she introduced me to this area, she actually grew up on Shore Drive. I just fell in love with it. At that point, I was wrapping up almost 20 years of being a high school teacher, and I decided I need a little bit of a change. I always joke kind of that I needed to get on the supply side instead of the demand side of the beer industry. So she introduced me to this area. I was homebrewing like a madman. And when I met this guy, who was working down a little way down the road at a place called Lenny Pub, I knew I'd found a guy who could handle all the front of house stuff, and figured what the heck, why not open a brewery? Everybody's doing it.
Nice.
Yeah, and we were both in the same home brewers club. He was a lot more active participant than I was, but generally, bartending, there's a lot of events around the weekend, and so I worked several of the events, but didn't get to attend many of them. But yeah, just a love of craft beer and trying new beers and making beers kind of brought us together, and then decided to take the plunge and do something crazy and open a small brewery.
Yeah, so from going from brewing in the garage to brewing did you guys brew together individually and then came together and started brewing together, or was it brewing individually and then decided to open up a brewery together?
Brewing individually, and I did it mostly to have something to do while I was drinking beer. And Drew is kind of the opposite side of things. I never made the same beer twice and took very few notes and didn't really take it very seriously. Drew is kind of the opposite side of things, where he's very meticulous about note taking and really making a consistent product. So it's kind of like I'm the wacky guy coming up with silly ideas, and then he's the guy that has his feet on the ground and executes well.
Yeah. So as you guys have opened up your brewery, with the difference in personalities, and like I said, there's two other owners that aren't here with us today. How is that, those four different personalities, how is that factored in? What have been the positives? What have been some of the challenges you guys have had to overcome?
Well, I can answer that in part with something he just said. One of my favorite things is when I come in and Tim's like, I got a really dumb idea, because that almost always leads to something amazing. Once in a while, maybe not, but some of our best ongoing events, some of our most popular beers. I think, in fact, one of our most best-selling beers is a Gosa with rhubarb in it called Shark Tears, and he was reading something about rhubarb, and I came in one day and he said, "Oh yeah, we gotta make a beer with rhubarb." And I was like, "Okay," and we spitballed about it for a little bit and just made it as a one-off beer, and people loved it. So it's he brings a lot of inventiveness, a lot of wacky ideas, a lot of cool stuff, and I figure it's my job to try and put that into reality.
All right, I like it.
And that beer actually kind of ties in with our location a little bit too. The Gosa by style has salt in it, so we use sea salt that we get. The Virginia Pilot Association is right down the street, and we send buckets out with them, and they go out to the CH buoy, which is about 3 miles outside of the mouth of the bay here. They bring back in seawater, and then I spend entirely too much time watching it boil, and then that's the salt that we put into the beer. So
That's cool.
And of course, one of the most time inefficient beers that we make is one of the most popular. So
Yep.
It takes a lot longer.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I have to confess, it's the first rhubarb beer I've ever heard of.
Right.
So that's awesome.
Try to do, do
Great
things
to
that
be.
are outside of the box.
Yeah.
Do things a little kind of fun. In an effort to make it more efficient and also more earth friendly, I guess, Tim's recently come up with a new idea, which we're still testing out. But basically, he has made a solar reducer to use sunlight to evaporate the salt water instead of burning propane, spending hours staring at it and mushing it around. So far, it seems to be working real well. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty exciting.
What do you guys envision is the future of Pleasure House Brewing? Where do you guys want to be in 5 years, 10 years?
That's a big question, which seems to kind of change every day.
Yeah.
I personally don't ever see us being a larger regional brewery. Yeah, I think by the time you get to that point, I would imagine you're spending more time talking to lawyers and accountants and multiple distributors than you would be talking to customers, which is really what I enjoy, and how we get a lot of feedback on what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what people like and what they don't.
Absolutely.
And I know Drew enjoys talking to the customers a lot too. And we have kind of a very strong regular following here, and I personally don't want to ever lose that, and it's just kind of a hometown, like, neighborhood brewery feel, and we want to keep that. And it would be nice to be able to keep up with the demand where we're distributed now, but we're working on it. So we may expand a little bit, but it in the grand scheme of things, it won't be a large expansion.
I think that was kind of one of the things we agreed on early on, is that we don't ever really want to be a place where we don't know the people drinking our beer. I mean,
That's a cool idea.
yeah, I mean, to some extent it's inevitable if you start distributing. You're not really going to see everybody face to face, but we do a lot of things that are stupid, and I don't know if they really are or not. They seem to be working okay, but from listening to other breweries and other brewers and various employees, it seems to me a lot of them start out with a really intense branding message, and they have a whole plan developed with the social media blitz and beautiful decorations and things like that. We kind of started the other way around, and we've built a lot of what we do around the people who come here all the time, and even some people who don't come here that often that give us good feedback. Tim mentioned our regulars. We didn't start out with a mug club, but we sort of built one as a thank you to them.
Yeah.
It's just things like that. Like, most of our really popular beers are named after or made for our regulars. Every Christmas we make a 12.5% spiced Belgian quad called Snatch You Bald Headed, which everybody thinks has to do with me, but actually it's a phrase that I heard when I was teaching. It's kind of a local, colloquial phrase, and one of our regulars was in here, and I heard her say that, and I had just made the beer and I hadn't come up with a name for it yet, and I was like, that's perfect, because
Great.
you don't really taste the alcohol in the beer, and then you try to stand up, and okay.
Those are the sneaky ones.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I said, I don't think that's industry standard in how to run a brewery, but it kind of fits for us in terms of really connecting with the people that come in here.
That's great. Speaking of branding, how did you guys come up with your name and your logo?
There's a couple answers to that. I was living on Pleasure House Road when I was homebrewing a lot.
Okay.
And I love the name. As a history person, I knew what the immediate name of the road was about, when being in a Navy town.
Yeah.
But I also did a little bit of research and found that there appears to have been a pub in the, or a tavern, whatever you want to call it, in the late 1600s, somewhere in this area, that was called the Pleasure House.
Oh, cool.
Which I thought was interesting. And to me, back then, people lived a pretty spread out lives, didn't have a lot of communication, and taverns were one of the places where they could really connect with each other, and it seemed to fit from that aspect much better than the Navy recreational house.
Very cool. You guys talk on your website a lot about, you have two main things that you're really passionate about. One is brewing beer, and two is community involvement or involvement in your community, and that kind of seems to fit into that same theme. You guys talk a little bit about what you guys do for your community. I know you have a thing you call Crock for a Cause that you run each Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, which is, I believe, is a fundraiser.
Yep.
Can you guys talk a little bit about what you guys do for, aside from being a local brewery that really wants to just focus on the community, what else do you guys do that engages with the local community here?
Sure. It was one of his dumb ideas, so let's tackle that one.
The Crock for a Cause, we used to call it Crockpot Sunday.
Okay.
So the idea was to, we're not a restaurant, so we don't serve food, but you can bring in whatever food you want. So this is a fundraiser for an organization called K9 New Life. It's a no-kill dog rescue and adoption program in a shelter. And so what we do is people involved with the charity bring in dishes. They may or may not be in a crock pot, but just whatever you want to bring in, then you're entered into the contest. And then whoever's here, we just ask for a $5 minimum donation to the charity. And then basically whoever's here that wants to eat, you donate, then eat, and then vote. And whatever dish gets the most votes gets a $40 gift card to the brewery. Cool. And then so all the money goes to the charity and everybody gets a good home-cooked meal. So that's one of the things we do. We also are in the process of raffling off our, I believe, 10th kegerator. This one is for Junior Achievement of Greater Hampton Roads. It's just $5 a ticket. We only sell 200 tickets. So we're not really blowing everybody out of the water by donating a bunch of money, but we're doing what we can, and it's a good value for everybody that participates. We do events for
Children's Hospital of King's Daughters.
Yep.
In a number of local schools, bands, like school bands. That's one of the other things we did. We end up participating in a lot of other charity events. CP Shuckers, which is, we've got a lot of friends over there. It's a local restaurant. They do a charity golf tournament every year, so we always end up, contributing to that, beer and money. And I think last year they raised like $30,000 or something. We were only a tiny part of that, but it's that we try to be part of whatever we can.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
We also, in terms of brewing beer and community stuff, last fall we got together with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and brewed a beer called Rain Barrel, which was for the celebration of the 50th anniversary of Chesapeake Bay Foundation. About, I don't know, half a mile, maybe a mile down the road, there's a place called the Brock Center, which is the headquarters down here, and it's 100% self-sustaining, generates its own wind and solar electricity, captures rainwater, treats it, uses that for drinking, all that stuff. Just so happens that my father-in-law is retired and is a docent there, gives tours, and he was talking one day, and we came up with this plan to use rainwater to brew a beer. And so we've done that a couple times. The first one was for the actual party they threw, and then when we brew it and sell it, then each pint we donate $1 to the Chesapeake Bay Foundation.
What a great idea. That's cool.
Yeah, it turned out to be a pretty good beer for us.
We've talked about a handful of your beers so far. The Shark Tears seems to be the one that you guys are best known for, perhaps, maybe?
That and a beer called Glow, yeah.
I was going to say, what are your signature beers? What do you guys like the most? What do you guys get real excited about?
When we first started out, we weren't going to make a flagship beer because we're too cool for that. I think one of the 5th or 6th beers I brewed was Lynnhaven Coffee Cream Stout, and people drank it so fast and said, if you don't make more of this, I'm going to be really mad. So I immediately abandoned that and made some more. We do that now every year in the fall. Cool. If we have a flagship, it's a beer called Glow, short for Gloria. when we opened the brewery, my mother-in-law passed from lymphoma. We signed the lease on the brewery, and my wife and I adopted 2 kids.
Wow.
All in the same week. And
Wow.
so I made, it was exciting times. So I made the beer glow as a tribute to her. It's a Belgian blonde ale, real drinkable, and people kept crushing it. So it's kind of cool that tribute beer ended up being our best-selling beer.
What do you guys like the most? What are your favorite beers that you brew?
That changes all the time. Our selection here at the brewery changes constantly. I think we switched 2 beers last night. We've been open 3.5 years now, and I want to say we're at 155 unique beers.
Oh, I think we're well north of that.
Wow.
I think we're north of 165 by now.
Wow, in 3.5 years.
So a lot. Some have not been my favorite, for sure, and never will be. Some are never going to get made again.
True. Marley's Gift.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
But I actually have too many favorites to have them all on tap at once. And it kind of changes with the season, my mood, what I have to do today, tomorrow. So Snatchy Bald-Headed is one of my favorites in the winter, but I drink entirely too much of it, and it will take the edge off quickly. One beer, Rudy Inlet, is a double IPA we make with all Citra hops. I really love that beer. Shark Tears is great for a nice refreshing beer, especially in the summertime.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, those are some of my favorites.
Yeah, my favorite's a Belgian triple we make called Liquid Communication. It's just exactly what I want. And there's a lot of great classic Belgian triples, but if I had to choose, I'd probably drink that all the time.
Great.
Yeah.
And I know people can come and take it to go with a growler, or you get the bottles and the cans. You guys have it for sale anywhere outside of the brewery?
Yes, we started distribution statewide about 3.5-4 months ago.
Cool. Great.
And it's mostly in draft format to restaurants, bars, and growler fill stations and bottle shops and stuff. But we do distribute on a limited basis the crowlers, which are 32-ounce cans. But shortly, hopefully tomorrow or early next week, we'll get in a bottling line and start to do some 6-packs in a 12-ounce format here in the fairly near future.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, we'll start with Shark Tears and Liquid Communication, and a relatively new beer for us. It's a pre-prohibition American Pilsner, so a little more hoppy, but still crisp and clean and drinkable.
Nice.
It's called Grommet Cap.
It's a great name. You guys have the best names. I love it. So there's 4 owners, and each of you guys have a nickname, and I was hoping you guys could talk a little bit about how those nicknames came about. And of course, 2 of them aren't here, so you get to talk about them because they're not here. You get to say all sorts of nice or not so nice things about them. So might as well, right?
Right.
Tim, your nickname is?
Well, the publican, which is I guess an old school term for somebody who runs a pub. So I'm kind of in charge of the front of the house stuff, and I bartended for, well, I guess I still bartend, and it's been probably almost half my life. So I'm used to dealing with people and long shifts behind the bar. It's where I feel most comfortable. So that's kind of my gig, and then I throw silly ideas at Drew, and he, 1 out of 10 sticks to the wall. I'd say maybe not that many, but and then some of them work, and we actually do it. So that's kind of my role.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin is the curator, so he does. It's a short tour, but he does most of the tours that we have here. Our facility currently is 2,505 square feet, and it's jam-packed with stuff. And we're putting more in it every day. So it's a short tour, but it's interesting, especially for home brewers and people in the industry, because we didn't borrow money to do this. We did it all up with our own money, and some creative engineering, I guess you might say. Mostly this guy coming up with some creative and cost-efficient solutions to big money problems. So it's a neat tour. It is a short one, but it gives you kind of an insight to how we did things the way we did them and why we did them, and just creative solutions to big money problems that a lot of people, I don't think, they either go to investors or banks to solve that.
Right. Drew, you and your wife are both part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
So you're the dean, and your wife is a gregarious beer leader. So
Right.
how do those come about?
I think Dean has come from having been the guy who taught school for a while.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, my wife still is a teacher. Somebody had to have a real job. A good one too. And there have been a couple times when, after enjoying a few Chardonnays, I may or may not have started ranting about political situations in China or any handful of other things. So
Sure.
I think that had something to do with it. The gregarious beer leader, my wife likes to joke that she's a silent partner who's not silent.
Fair enough.
She's just as enthusiastic about beer as the rest of us. And wherever we go, whether it's here in Shore Drive or around the country, whatever, she loves talking to people about beer, talking about Pleasure House, and
Awesome.
sharing beers with them. So
Cool. Well, before we go, is there anything that you guys want our listeners to know about Pleasure House that we haven't already talked about?
one thing I would say is that anybody who's interested in our beer, we would love for them to come here. I mean, obviously it's good for us business wise, but I think really people get it when they come here. You look around, and I'm sure they can see it through the camera. It's not fancy, it's not beautiful, but the vast majority of the high ratings we get on any of the various social media platforms have to do with people feeling incredibly comfortable and incredibly happy.
Great.
I think that says a lot about Tim and Kevin and about the people who come here. So it's a good experience.
And I would also say the best way to really have our beer is here. We can only distribute but so many brands, and a lot comes through this tasting room, a lot of experimental stuff, and we're happy to pour flights at any point. We do them all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
So just with 165 beers in 3.5 years, that's pretty uncommon, and I would say anytime you're in town, stop by.
Great. Well, thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for watching. This is right down here on Short Drive in Virginia Beach. It's really close to the beach, so when you come on down to the beach, come on over to Pleasure House Brewing and grab yourself a beer.